I'm Jay Fidell, sitting in for Donna Blanchard, and this is your ThinkTech Daily News for Friday, April 24th. Comcast has officially ended its $45 billion bid to take over Time Warner Cable. There was much public scrutiny and criticism of the deal, most notably that the resulting monopoly would cause customers to pay more for declining service, and that the broadband industry giant would stifle competition. It was doubtful that the Federal Communications Commission would allow the move. This morning, Comcast CEO Brian Roberts said, "Today we move on. Of course, we would have liked to bring our great products to new cities, but we structured this deal so that if the government didn't agree, we'd walk away." FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler later stated that the decision to pull out of the merger plan is in the best interests of the consumers. That sentiment was echoed by Attorney General Eric Holder. Despite increasingly aggressive stimulus efforts by the Chinese central bank, factory activity in China contracted at its fastest pace in a year in April. The HSBC Market Preliminary Purchasing Managers Index fell to 49.2 in April, remaining below the 50-point level, which separates growth in activity from contraction. This is the second month in a row for economic contraction in China. Though March's sharp employment decline slowed in April and export orders have risen, new orders, factory output, and money supply declined. With a cooling property market, industrial overcapacity, and increasing local debt, the Chinese government and central bank have been closely studying lessons from Japan, Asia's former economic dynamo, whose policy missteps have plunged it into decades of deflation from which it is still struggling to emerge. Some economists predict that the numbers will balance out over the year as the reduction of the required reserve ratio will impact future months. A letter signed by the Undersecretary of the Indian Ministry of Home Affairs has added the Ford Foundation to a list of groups that may not give money to Indian organizations without government permission. The letter stated that the foreign contributions to Indian groups are used for bona fide welfare activities without compromising on concerns for national interest and security. This warning comes after a complaint made by the Gujarat state government about the activities of the Sabrang Trust, a group that receives several grants from the Ford Foundation. The Gujarat government asked the ministry to investigate the trust for disturbing the communal harmony and carrying out anti-national propaganda against India in foreign countries. The founder of the Sabrang Trust and her husband have been accused of embezzling funds meant for a museum in Ahmedabad to honor victims of the sectarian riots in Gujarat in 2002. Those riots left more than 1,000 people dead, most of them Muslims. The Ford Foundation released a statement that they had no communications directly from the Ministry of Home Affairs, but had been told of the investigation by the Finance Ministry. The foundation says it is cooperating in the investigation. The White House sent Vice President Joe Biden to speak to an Israeli Independence Day celebration yesterday. Animosity between President Obama and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have been quite public, peaking last week when the Prime Minister addressed a joint session of Congress through an unconventional invitation from congressmen rather than the White House. And the next week, the White House publicly disclaimed Mr. Netanyahu's comments opposing the formation of a Palestinian state and expressing alarm that Israeli Arabs were turning out in droves to vote. Mr. Biden's appearance yesterday at an event hosted by Ron Dermer, the Israeli ambassador to the United States, and a close confidant of Mr. Netanyahu, maybe a show of support meant more for the Israeli community than Mr. Netanyahu or Mr. Dermer, as this pragmatic administration seeks to maintain good relations with the American Jewish community. Jay Fidell, ThinkTech News.